in energy-producing states, as he said, Pennsylvania and Texas, and where polls show close races.
CBS News political contributors, that's Terry Sullivan and Jamal Simmons, join us now. Terry managed Senator Marco Rubio's campaign back in 2016, and Jamal worked for President Bill Clinton. He was also an advisor for President Barack Obama's 2008 campaign. Very busy gentleman, and we thank you guys for joining us this morning, because it was a real debate, a real conversation. Good morning to you both. And I think voters got to see real differences. So, Jamal, I want to start with you, because both camps are saying today, my guy had a great night. Can both be true?
Both could be true, because I think they're talking to very different parts of the American population.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, you know, they're talking to very different parts of the American population, right? So Vice President Biden is trying to appeal to these sort of suburban women who are, you know, feeling very anxious about the level of rancor that's occurring in this society. Donald Trump's trying to encourage his voters to show up and turn out. We're seeing some success for that with some of the non-college white voters who we're seeing starting to surge in some of these states. I'm hearing from a lot of analysts. But, you know, I think last night, President Trump, he surrendered to the politics on style, but he resisted when it came to substance. He never did offer a plan about how he was going to try to help solve the coronavirus, even though he seemed like he was trying to perform very well in terms of the style of the debate.
And Joe Biden? Jamal? Joe Biden?
And I think Joe Biden did Joe Biden did what it is he needed to do. He was out there and he really just, you know, he presented his case, and that was the case the American public wanted to hear, that he could be the one who had a plan for the American public and not get into some of those big fights that Donald Trump likes to get into, including about their kids, when Joe Biden didn't attack any of Trump's kids, even though Trump kept attacking Hunter.
Hey, Terry, do you think the muted microphone, listen, first let's give a shout out to Kristen Welker. I thought she guided it beautifully along. Do you think the muted mic made a difference for either candidate?
Maybe the prospect of being muted made a difference, because clearly it was a very different debate than it was a few weeks ago. But it didn't appear that it was used very often, if at all. And so one way or the other, this was the debate that Donald Trump needed, the best possible outcome for him. If it's enough at this point, I don't know. But if this was the Donald Trump who'd been campaigning the last 6 months, I think we'd be looking at an extremely different race. He really prosecuted the case against Joe Biden and against Joe Biden's policies in a very effective way. And it was a strong performance for him last night.
But he keeps saying, Terry, that the coronavirus is winding down. And he keeps saying it's winding down while the death toll keeps climbing. Do you think that's an effective strategy? Because it simply isn't true that the coronavirus is winding down, or that you don't need to worry about it and don't let it dominate your life. That's just not true.
Well, look, here's what is true, that there are facts and figures that show that the death rate is going down. The mortality rate is going down. There are positive things that we're seeing with the coronavirus, and we can't live our life in fear. And look, I can't defend and won't try to defend different things that Donald Trump says about the coronavirus, but the facts are that it is less lethal in the United States than it once was, and that's a good thing. And we should be covering that. We should be reporting it, and we shouldn't be just living out of pure fear all the time. There are parts of the economy that we have to open. We do need to have schools reopened. We need to learn how to live with this awful, terrible virus in the best way possible.
You know, Jamal, the president said...
Gail,
go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, we've been through this before as a country. In 1968, there were about 17,000 Americans who died in the Vietnam War. There were riots and protests that were taking place across the country. And Lyndon Johnson decided not to run for president. That was the case, I think, that Joe Biden was trying to get to last night. Anybody who's presided over a situation where 220,000 Americans have died, and he doesn't have a plan to get us out of that, to stop it, like Lyndon Johnson didn't have a plan to get us out of the Vietnam War, it's time for him to step down. I think the president likes to compare to 1968, and he thinks he's Richard Nixon, Law and Order. It might be that he's LBJ, and his time has passed.
He also says that he's done more for Black America than any president other than Abraham Lincoln. Speaking of LBJ, should maybe LBJ be included in that Civil Rights Voting Act back in 1964 seemed to be quite helpful to your people, Jamal.
I think there are a few presidents who might make the cut.
So what did you think? What did you think when he said that?
You know, I thought it was something ridiculous. And, you know, we heard Joe Biden, I mean, at one point he says, "Oh, God," over the course of the microphone, which is another quote that will last, I think, in infamy. You know, when we hear that kind of thing, it just goes to the core point of the Trump presidency, which is that it seems like he says the things that he thinks are good for him politically, but not necessarily the things that are appropriate or good for the American family. And that's the point that I think Americans are really ready to get past, is let's find somebody who can bring the country together and not just somebody who's going to keep dividing us.
So, Terry, final word from you. 50 million people, they say, close to 50 have already voted in this race. What does each person need to do in the final stretch? It's 11 days, Terry, and counting.
You know, Donald Trump needs to keep prosecuting the case against Joe Biden that he's going to raise taxes and that President Trump won't, that he's better for the economy, and that he's going to return America to being a little bit more normal sooner. And that's the same thing that Joe Biden does in a different way, is that he needs to continue to show that, look, if you're tired of this, if you're tired of the way things are, I'm the change you need. And, you know, both of them have that same thing.
All right, Terry Sullivan and Jamal Simmons, I know we'll see you again in the next 11 days. Thank you both.
And Gail, I trimmed my beard for you.
I know.
So.
I noticed, but I wasn't going to say anything, but I definitely noticed. All right, thanks, guys.
Just for you.
Thank you. I'm going to